Saturday, when former President Donald Trump Save America sent out an email that asked prospective donors to, quote, contribute any amount immediately to the official Georgia runoff fundraising goal and increase your impact by 1,200%. But if donors didn't see a link that said click here for details or to edit allocation, they wouldn't have noticed 90% of the contributions automatically go to the Orange Menace, Mango Mussolini, Donald Trump, and only 10% go to Walker. This is, we could actually look at this. This is a video put together by Jacob Rabashkin. And what you will see as you click through here is that you check that you want to contribute a certain amount. And then there is this link. In this case, it was $250 that was clicked. There's a link that says click here for details or to edit allocation. If you just click the $250 or whatever amount, and then you look at the allocation, you will see that, in this case, it's $1,000. Of the $1,000 contribution, $900 was automatically allocated to go, wait a second, to Donald Trump. But this was a Herschel Walker fundraising email. And yet, unless you modify it, only 10% of the donation goes to Herschel Walker. NBC News reports that after this was highlighted, Trump's committee changed it to a 50-50 split, a 50-50 split. This is not unique to Herschel Walker. NBC News reports that at least originally in some J.D. Vance fundraising emails and Ted Budd fundraising emails, it was initially also 90-10. Subsequently, some of those were changed. It's the final grift, or maybe not. The real final grift may be running for president again. We just don't know. We'll find out tonight. Or maybe we won't find out tonight. But this is what Donald Trump does. And as I've told you before, Trump doesn't like his followers. Trump doesn't respect his followers. We all know when we think about it, Donald Trump was a rich kid from New York City who spent his life insulating and isolating himself from the very people who now are his supporters. Sure, to some degree, he probably sees them favorably to the extent that they support him. But we've seen very quickly, when there isn't anything for them to vote for you for, or for them to donate to you for, you flush them 10 or 15 times. Trump cares about his supporters if they might vote for him for something or if they might donate money. And he is now bilking them even more. Trump's plane has been repainted and refreshed and renovated and fixed up so that now it is flying him to rallies once again. These people who support him should say, wait a second, we donated all this money. He became president. He didn't do any of the stuff he said he was going to do. Didn't do the healthcare plan. I still have no healthcare. I have terrible healthcare. He didn't build the wall. He didn't fix trade. He didn't do any of those things. Then he asked me for more money. He lost in 2020. Then he asked me for more money. And now he shows up making terrible endorsements for people that end up losing in 2022 and shows up in a new plane. Did I pay for that plane? Have I been scammed again by this guy? But that is not the way they think it through. That does not seem to occur to them. And we will find out very, very soon whether he still has the political cachet to continue fundraising into 2023. We have a fantastic bonus show for you today. The Senate will act this week to codify same-sex marriage federally. They say they have the votes. Do they? I think they do. We'll talk about what this will mean. Google is paying nearly $392 million to settle a huge location tracking case. I have some personal experience with this, which I will share on today's bonus show.
Oh, the bonus show where you want to make money, but everybody else that makes money to fund themselves is bad.
And lastly, even though Kevin McCarthy wants to be the next Speaker of the House, if Republicans indeed take control of the House of Representatives, some Republicans are warning McCarthy, you don't have the votes to be the Speaker of the House. Does he or doesn't he? And if not, could he get them? All of those stories and more on today's bonus show. Sign up at joinpacman.com. Use the coupon code 24starts now to get a beautiful discount. I'll see you then.
Amazon Business honors Ricardo Gurgel, owner of Veggie Root Tavern. This week, Ricardo saved big and used Amazon Business to help his team buy commercial deep fryers.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, he did it. Last night, a wet and glistening Donald Trump announced his 2024 presidential run to a crowd of sort of bored people, quite frankly. That's one of the storylines from Mar-a-Lago, which we'll get to a little bit later. But a very different energy last night than in times past. Trump himself even seemed kind of bored with the speech he was reading off of his teleprompter. The crowd only engaged at a few moments. And remember that many people around Trump were telling him as recently as Monday, you should not do this. You should not do this after the results of the 2022 midterms. You should not do this after the realization that this isn't even really over 2022 elections until December 6th with the runoff in Georgia. And Donald Trump deciding to do it. Now, many of you will remember our friend Michael Cohen, Trump's former lawyer, swore up and down to me, Trump's not going to run. Many others, even in my audience, were emailing me as recently as yesterday morning saying Trump's not going to run. He is running, and we are now going to have another potentially 2 years of insanity in the United States. Now, before we get to the clips, another aspect to this that I believe, especially with the energy behind Ron DeSantis, may be very different than in 2016 and in 2020, is that you are going to see the people behind Donald Trump, especially those who get behind him this early, on average, be even more extreme because there are now other options, including Ron DeSantis, who hasn't declared that he's running for anything and is already leading Trump in most polls taken after the November 8th midterms, all of which we will get to. CNN and Fox News initially covered Trump's speech live. They eventually cut away. We're going to get to that as well. MSNBC ignored it completely. I tried to cover it. We had technical issues, which I will address a little bit later. I got some really nasty emails about it, but I will get to that. But let's start off with already, just even the way Donald Trump was welcomed into the room was absurd.
Gentlemen, please welcome the next president and first lady of the United States of America, President Donald J. Trump, accompanied by Mrs. Melania Trump.
It's time for Nicole Sandler's What's News from NicoleSandler.com and the Progressive Voices Network.
As we learned Tuesday, a Russian-made missile came down in eastern Poland near the border with Ukraine on Tuesday, killing 2 people. President Biden called emergency meetings of G7 and NATO leaders who plan to meet Wednesday to discuss that strike in Poland, while Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky called that strike a very significant escalation of Russia's invasion of Ukraine. U.S. officials now saying it was probably fired by Ukraine forces at an incoming Russian strike against Ukraine's electrical infrastructure. So for now, phew. With the election over, Congress is back in session and busy deciding who will lead each party's chambers in the 118th Congress. But the control of the House is still undecided. Even though it's very close, Republicans still sit at press time at 217 seats, just one shy of the 218 needed for majority. But with 10 races still to be called and the Republicans leading in 4 of them, it's virtually inevitable that they'll clinch it, likely even sometime today. But the Republicans on Tuesday still voted on leadership, which Kevin McCarthy handily won, though he didn't garner the 218 votes he'd need to become Speaker. On the Senate side, it's already settled that the Democrats will continue in the majority. Even if Herschel Walker somehow beats Raphael Warnock in the December 6th Georgia runoff, the chamber would still stand, as it is now, 50-50, with Vice President Kamala Harris breaking any ties. So you'd think Mitch McConnell is safe. Well, Florida Senator Rick Scott, who also is chair of the National Republican Senatorial Committee, formally challenged Mitch McConnell as Senate Minority Leader. Rick Scott is the highest-ranking Republican pushing to end Medicare and Social Security. Way to go, Republicans. Yeah. Well, now that they're in the lame duck session, the Senate will vote Wednesday afternoon on a cloture motion for the Respect for Marriage Act. This bill would codify the right to same-sex marriage into federal law. Republican and Democratic sponsors of a revised version of the bill include Senators Tammy Baldwin, Susan Collins, Kyrsten Sinema, and Thom Tillis, believe that they have the 60 votes needed to overcome a filibuster. Stay tuned. A federal judge on Tuesday blocked Title 42. That's that controversial Trump-era rule that has allowed U.S. authorities to expel more than 1 million migrants who cross the border from Mexico. This leaves the Biden administration without a tool put in place to address the thousands of migrants arriving at the border on a daily basis. While the rule was drafted by the Trump administration during the COVID-19 pandemic, the Biden administration has relied heavily on it to manage the increase of migrants at the border. The administration has requested a stay on the ruling for 5 weeks. Breaking news out of Georgia, where a judge overturned that state's ban on abortion starting at around 6 weeks into pregnancy, ruling that it violated the U.S. Constitution and Supreme Court precedent when it was enacted. The lawsuit was filed by doctors and advocacy groups in July. And this ruling restored earlier regulations, making abortion legal in the state up to about 22 weeks. The Georgia Attorney General's office said the state has already filed an appeal. U.S. stocks jumped on Tuesday after new data showed that supplier price increases slowed in October. The producer price index increased by 8% on an annual basis. That's down from 8.4% in September and down from March's 11.7% pace. The news boosted hopes that the Federal Reserve interest rate hikes were starting to bring down the highest inflation in decades. Well, NASA finally launched the Artemis rocket. Yeah, the 322-foot-tall Space Launch System rocket blasted off from Florida early Wednesday morning on a 25-day test flight that will send the Orion crew capsule to the moon and back. Now, the crew are all mannequins, but this, they say, is a key step in returning humans to the surface of the moon. And if this mission goes as planned, the Artemis 2 follow-up mission will launch before 2025, but instead of mannequins, there will be 4 astronauts in the Orion capsule. And then Artemis 3, before 2030, will attempt to land 2 astronauts on the moon. And finally, the spectacle at Mar-a-Lago happened Tuesday night as the former guy announced that he's running for president again in 2024. And though actually he did say this:
in order to make America great and glorious again, I am tonight announcing my candidacy for president of the United States.
We have to thank Stephen Colbert for reimagining what he should have said.
I want you to know that I'm running away forever, and I'm never going to come back.
Maybe I'll have to leave the country.
I will immediately be forgotten. Nobody will come to my funeral. I think I'll tell my son Eric that I have been abducted by Space Force. I've always been a no good, rotten, disgusting embarrassment to our great country. So in conclusion, bye-bye, bing, bong, and God bless the United States.
And that's just a bit of what's news, and some that isn't. For now, I'm Nicole Sandler. If you appreciate these reports and the Nicole Sandler Show, I hope you'll consider making a contribution. My work is 100% listener supported, and I can't do it without your help. Find out more at NicoleSandler.com, and please click on that donate button.
Mary had a little man.
We believe that all men are created equal.
To the magnificent mosaic that is America.
From radio beacon to radio beacon.
I have a dream.
Change has come to America.
Believe me.
Help is on the way.
Knock, knock. Who's there?
It's a figment of your imagination.
Randi Rhodes Show. Turn up your mind.
Nobody has ever done what we've done in the last 4 years.
Their entire economic plan, tax cuts for the rich and corporations.
And record-breaking unemployment.
The worst jobs report on record.
Trump is the only modern president to leave office with fewer jobs than when he took office.
The Trump administration formally asking the Supreme Court to overturn the Affordable Care Act. This could leave up to 23 million Americans without coverage.
I hope that they end
It'll be so good if they had. You also had people that were very fine people on both sides.
Do you believe in punishment for abortion? Yes or no?
There has to be some form of punishment.
For the woman?
Yeah, there has to be some form. And if I win, we will treat those people from January 6th fairly. And if it requires pardons, we will give them pardons.
Biden put that up last night while Donald Trump was draping himself in 33 flags and 19 chandeliers in the ballroom of Magaloco, where Donald Trump decided that he was going to announce his candidacy.
In order to make America great and glorious again, I am tonight announcing my candidacy for President of the United States.
Great and glorious. Glorious, everybody. Glorious is, he couldn't make America great and glorious again because he can't even manage to make himself a cup of coffee. I mean, the man was bored with his own speech. He was literally bored crapless with his own damn speech last night, but he kept on going. He persevered, which is the sign of true leadership, isn't it? Oh, it's just this launch was more doomed than the SS Minnow. I swear to God, this was just such a shipwreck. It was just so bad. The lying was, listen, fact check, please. Just waiter, I need a check, please. Fact check. It was so full of garbage. It was so full of lies. It was so delusional that only one man could be responsible for delivering the speech, okay? I mean, he literally said, swear to God, did you see it? Did anybody watch it? I don't know who watched it or not. I could tell you if you watch Fox News, you didn't see the whole thing because Fox News cut away from it. Sean Hannity cut away from it in his 8 o'clock hour. And then Lala Ingraham, she came in, she started it again, and then she said, okay, we're cutting away. I mean, that's how bad it was. That's how bad it was. Now, I don't know if that's, information that comes from on high, if they have meetings over there where they say, Rupert really hates Trump. And you will not, because did you see Rupert Murdoch's New York Post today? I mean, it's an amazing thing. It had like a whole front page of, some crazy, horrible crime that happened in New York. And then at the very, very bottom of the front page, I mean, right at the bottom, it said, swear to God, you got to hand it to the New York Post. They are the best headline writers in the history of headline writers. But at the bottom of the page, it said, Florida man makes announcement, page 26. Swear to God. That's what it said. So I don't know if Fox has marching orders to march away from Donald Trump, but I will tell you this, that, like on some of the other shows, they were showing some of the primary contestants, some of the, not yet, never was wannabes, and they were showing Pence, and they were showing, a Cruz, and they were showing Hawley, but of all the people that they showed, not one of the people was Donald Trump. Because he's an embarrassment, okay? He's a 3-time loser. He is an let me I have to play this for you because this just blew my mind that he actually is this delusional, okay? He actually said that with him as president of the United States of America, that America for decades under him, decades, it just felt like decades. But America under him for decades had seen no wars.
My opponents made me out to be a warmonger and just a terrible person who would immediately go into war. They said during the 2016 campaign that if he becomes president, there will never be a war within weeks. And we will have wars like you've never seen before. It will happen immediately. And yet, I've gone decades without a war, the first president to do it for that long a period.
Okay, so you might actually think that he misspoke, but then he actually repeated the lie and said, I'm the first president that ever was able to do it, to go decades and decades without a war. let's face it, another Trump presidency would be the absolute worst nightmare for this country. But a Trump candidacy would only be a nightmare for the GOP. So, hey, everybody, get ready to have a hilarious time because he is running. I mean, it's so bizarre. It was last night, I tell you, you know what it was like? It was like watching a cat get all tangled up in a ball of yarn, except cats are cute. So maybe it was like one of those rabid cats, okay, a foaming, frothing, rabid warthog, getting itself tangled in a ball of yarn. It was painful. It was bizarre. And how many flags does one man need? 33 flags in a ballroom. 33 flags. There were more flags on that stage than there are on Memorial Day at Arlington National Cemetery, and I bet you every last one of them was made in China, who, by the way, he blamed for the loss of his election. I swear to God, he's not done. He actually did one of his, many people say, because he went off script, okay? He literally went off the teleprompter for a brief moment.
Many people think that because of this, China played a very active role in the 2020 election. Just saying. Sure, that didn't happen.
No, it didn't. In the 2020 election, you could tell he went off the teleprompter. I mean, they're trying so hard, the Jason Millers of the world. They're trying so hard to script him, to keep him from being an election denier, because we just had an election and election denial was rejected. And who rejected it? Moderate Republicans and independents and every single Democrat down to a person. Okay. And you cannot win elections without moderate Republicans and independents who got real spooked by the entirety of the Trump presidency and the election denial. They got real spooked that if election deniers were put in charge of elections, we wouldn't have elections anymore. And turns out Americans like elections. They kind of like democracy. They like it. Okay. So they had to have told him, stick to the script, stay on the teleprompter. We're not going down the election denial road. He just couldn't help himself. He just couldn't. And, the way that he started the last time he was successful, let's just say, which is almost 10 years ago now. I mean, it's unbelievable. 2015, right? In 2015, you remember that it was a big to-do. He hired actors. Remember that? He hired people to go to his Trump Tower on Fifth Avenue. Some people got actually beaten outside of Trump Tower, and they prevailed in their lawsuits. But anyway, he came down the elevator with Melania in the white dress, the whole thing. And what was his speech about? It was about doom and gloom and drug dealers and murderers and rapists and racism and every imaginable horror that you could invoke for the American people is what he invoked. And then, sort of intimated that he was the guy who would tackle it. He was the only guy who could fix it, which he never did, okay? He lied last night. He said he built a wall, which is hysterical. He didn't build a wall. He fixed some parts of a wall, reinforced other parts of a wall. I mean, it was so bizarre, but he did the same damn thing with the dark.
Clear for takeoff. Randi Rhodes. RandiRhodes.com.
If you're like me, you're probably a bit frustrated with the state of our political system today. So why does American democracy look the way it does? And how can we make it more responsive to the people it was formed to serve? Democracy Decoded, a podcast by Campaign Legal Center, examines our government and discusses innovative ideas that could lead to a stronger, more transparent, accountable, and inclusive democracy. In season 2, host Simone Leeper covers everything you need to know about voting in the U.S. She speaks with experts from across the country and voters representing impacted communities about the deliberate barriers to voting that exist today. And she asks, how can we make our voting systems more inclusive? Because our democracy works best when every voter can participate. Listen to the latest season at democracydecoded.org or wherever you get your podcasts. DemocracyDecoded.org.
America's political, corporate, and media establishments were cocksure about their prognostications that a powerful red wave was about to hit America in this month's elections. It would sweep Democrats out and push Republicans into office all across America, they exclaimed. How shocking and embarrassing, then, that their raging wave turned out to be just a little ripple. Republicans ran poorly and many Democrats ran well. Still, the Democratic Party as a whole should have done better if its Don't Rock the Boat leadership had been gutsier, more progressive, and, yes, more democratic. Well, murmur the party's Washington hierarchy, we can't get too far ahead of the people. Really? Why not ask the people themselves? That's the virtue of the ballot initiative system. It allows grassroots groups to put issues up for a vote, rather than letting the public agenda be controlled by a clique of lobbyists, legislators, and party line followers. This year, there were 132 of these initiatives on the ballots in 37 states, and more on local ballots. And vote after vote showed that the people are way ahead of the political insiders in support of strong progressive policies. By big margins, 3 states said to hell with a Republican Supreme Court enshrining women's abortion rights in their state constitutions. South Dakota, supposedly a right-wing bastion, shoved their GOP governor and legislators aside to expand Medicaid health coverage to the state's low-income families. In bright red Nebraska, nearly 60% of voters said yes to a $15 minimum wage. A big majority in Illinois amended the state constitution to guarantee collective bargaining rights for workers. 70% of New Mexico voters made funding of early childhood education a constitutional requirement. This is Jim Hightower saying, for more information, go to ballotpedia.org.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 2006. That was the day mounted police charged 50 janitors and their supporters during a protest in Houston. SEIU's Justice for Janitors campaign had been organizing for years throughout the South and Southwest. Modeled on success achieved in California, SEIU broadened their campaign to Houston and Miami. The union called a month-long strike against the city's largest cleaning companies. Protests and civil disobedience actions continued throughout the strike. Hundreds of strikers routinely marched through the streets of Houston, beating drums and hauling bags of garbage into the middle of intersections to highlight the key services they provided to the city. They were subject to repeated threats of firings and arrests. When police charged at the janitors, it served to turn public support in favor of the strikers. By the end of the month, Tom Balinoff and SEIU Local 1 in Chicago claimed victory for 53.
Don't give up. Don't give up. What's true?
All things Randy at RandiRhodes.com.
Go for launch.
Speaking truth to power, the Randi Rhodes Show.
Hundreds of thousands of pounds of deadly drugs, including very lethal fentanyl, are flooding across the now open and totally porous southern border.
I thought you built a
wall. The blood-soaked streets of our once great cities are cesspools of violent crimes, which are being watched all over the world as leadership of other countries explain that this is what America and democracy is really all about. How sad. The United States has been embarrassed, humiliated, and weakened for all to see.
Oh, my God. Do you live in a blood-soaked city, anybody? Everybody? We're all living in blood-soaked hellholes. We're all living in pits of despair, pits of violence, pits of, democracy that creates crime or some such. I don't even know what he's talking about. I mean, this is so bizarre. You know, the murders that are happening in this country are happening in red states. You had 4 students in freaking Moscow, Idaho that were murdered in just like the last couple of days. It's an unsolved mystery. They don't even have a person, a suspect. And then you saw those football players who were killed by another football player. Unfortunately, this was obviously, a crime between people that knew each other, that, were all on the football team. one of the guys, the guy that murdered his friends, literally murdered his friends. And it seems as if it's because he was very jealous that he never got to play, right? He was on the team, but he never got to play. He was on a road trip with this team that he never got to play for. And then, there were 3 guys who were like stars of the team. One was an honor roll student. The other 2 were amazing players, with bright futures. And this crazy lunatic that didn't get to play decided to shoot the other 3. And apparently the university was looking into the shooter because during a hazing incident when he was trying to join a fraternity, one of the fraternity members reported him as saying that he had a gun on campus. And the shooter wouldn't, cooperate with the investigation into whether or not he had a gun. I think he probably thought that these 3 guys dropped a dime on him or snitched or whatever the hell. And he killed his friends. What is he talking about? Blood-soaked streets. What is he talking about? Why is he doing this all over again? I mean, this is the playbook, right? Paint a disgusting, dank, dark, bloody, listen, for us, it's like, it's so dark. It's like a David Lynch movie, but, David Lynch is like some weird dark comedy. So for, the Democrats, it's like hilarious. But for the people that watch this swill, I swear to God, I could see where they would start to buy on in again to this picture that Trump likes to paint of America being a blood-soaked, violent country. Because, look, he presided over one of the most violent days it was the most violent day that we've ever seen at the U.S. Capitol. It was an unbelievable scene of debauchery and like medieval, tunnel violence, right? I mean, and he's sitting there preaching to us about how we're all we're blood stained. The country is, disgusting. And then he started telling me, you haven't even begun to feel the pain. Some people feel the pain, but the pain is just starting. It's just beginning.
Much criticism is being placed on the fact that the Republican Party should have done better, and frankly, much of this blame is correct. But the citizens of our country have not yet realized the full extent and gravity of the pain our nation is going through, and the total effect of the suffering is just starting to take hold. They don't quite feel it yet, but they will very soon. I have no doubt that by 2024, it will sadly be much worse, and they will see much more clearly what happened and what is happening to our country, and the voting will be much different. 2024.
You're a psycho. You understand that? You are a very strange and sick man who hates this country. Now, that's me, right? And a lot of you out there are going, well, that's just you. That's how you are. You've always been, you always hated him. Yes, I have always hated him because he's pro-violent. Okay, he loves violence when it's done at his behest. He has no problem with violent people as long as they're doing violence because, they're attacking people he doesn't like. No problem at all, whether it's law enforcement or Congress members or his own vice president. He just doesn't give a damn about solving the problem of violence, okay? He also has absolutely no clue how to govern, none, nor is he interested in how to govern. But that's just me. Okay. Let's go to the National Review. The National Review is like one of the most stalwart, consistently conservative. I mean, like, never saw a tax cut they wouldn't applaud, okay? Never saw, an increase on the middle class that they wouldn't applaud if it meant that the rich were going to get richer. You know what the title of their editorial board's editorial was today? Do you know what the title of it is? One word. No. That is the title of their editorial today. No. And it says, this was a great start, I have to say. I mean, to paraphrase Voltaire, see, this is what I'm telling you. They're elitist, they're erudite, they're conservative, mavens. Okay. To paraphrase Voltaire, after he attended an orgy, once was an experiment. Twice would be perverted. And then they trash him mercilessly. A bruised Donald Trump announced a new presidential bid on Tuesday night, an invitation to double down on the outrages and failures of the last several years that Republicans should reject without hesitation or doubt. They give him credit here for killing off the Clinton dynasty. This is what they cheer at the National Review, okay? To his credit, they write, Trump killed off the Clinton dynasty in 2016, nominated and got confirmed 3 constitutionalist justices, who, by the way, are responsible for your loss. Yeah, because they decided that they were going to just take away 50 years of rights that women had relied on in this country, but they're still cheering that, right? Got confirmed 3 constitutionalist justices, reformed taxes, the tax cut, that's it. And then they said, pushed deregulation. Yeah, what did he do? I don't know. Got control of the border. Yeah, that was called COVID. And significantly degraded ISIS in Syria and Iraq. Well, I think you could thank Putin for that. Anyway, they said, that said, the Trump administration was chaotic even on its best days because of his erratic nature and lack of seriousness. He often acted as if he were a commentator on his own presidency and issued orders on Twitter and in other off-the-cuff statements that were ignored. He repeatedly had to be talked out of disastrous ideas by his advisors and the Republican elected officials, turned on his own cabinet officials and aides on a dime, had limited understanding of our constitutional system, and at the end of the day, very little respect for it. That's his cheering squad. Those are the positive things.
Randi Rhodes. RandiRhodes.com.
This is Stephanie Miller, and here's what you missed.
Oh my God, they are freaking out about it's the same thing. They're all like, stop, cancel all mail-in voting now. Blah blah blah. Like raise the voting age.
Scott Walker came back from the dead to chime in on that one.
Yeah.
And they were so hot for mail-in voting about 5 years ago.
Yeah.
I mean, in fact, I thought it was one of the better ideas they've had in the last 30 years.
Yeah. Well, I mean, also because a lot of their voters are older and
Right, exactly. I mean, that's, there's still probably a line of golf carts outside the polling place at the Villages down in Florida.
Speaking of the big announcement from Florida today, Newsmax tweeted, former President Donald Trump won't only officially announce his 2024 presidential race Tuesday, but he'll surround himself with his success stories from the 2022 midterm races, Dick Morris said on Newsmax.
Oh, God.
Oh, Lord. That's a 3-reel shot of stupid, isn't it?
You just said that is some vintage bolt throughout this tweet.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. What will be those success stories, do you think?
Well, I think J.D. Vance is going to be working very hard up on that stage.
Just him. Yeah.
Herschel Walker hasn't lost yet.
Yeah.
Well, how do you think all this affects the Georgia runoff turnout, etc.?
Oh, I go back and forth on it, and I don't know enough of. I rely on Greg Bluestein for all of my Georgia political knowledge. I think that people are going to run away from Herschel like lemmings over the cliff.
Yeah. After what happened.
There's no reason to vote for him. The only reason to vote for him would have been if the Senate was on the line.
Right. Yeah.
That's the only reason any sensible human being would have for voting for him. And it's a pretty bad reason, by the way. Yeah. But now there isn't one. I mean, there's no reason to vote for the guy. If Warnock was able to win the last runoff, he damn sure should be able to win this one.
Hear all this and more on the next Stephanie Miller Show.
911, what's your emergency?
America's healthcare system is broken and people are dying.
Welcome to Code WACK, where we shine a light on America's callous healthcare system, how it hurts us, and what we can do about it. I'm your host, Brenda Gazar. This time on Code WACK, what pitfalls does Medicare Advantage pose? And what is the Medigap trap that many people are unwittingly falling into? To find out, we spoke to Diane Archer, founder and president of Just Care USA, an independent digital media hub covering health and financial issues facing boomers and their families.
As a general rule, in almost every state but 4, if you want to switch to traditional Medicare, once you've been in Medicare Advantage for more than 12 months, you have no right to buy supplemental coverage. In traditional Medicare, you get that coverage from the doctors you want to see when you want to see them. Pretty great. There's an issue though. You need supplemental insurance to fill gaps in traditional Medicare, and that costs about $2,500 a year. You don't have a right to that insurance except when you first enroll in Medicare at 65. And so if you join a Medicare Advantage plan and stay more than 12 months, then you no longer have that right to buy Medicare supplemental coverage, except in New York, Connecticut, Massachusetts, and Maine. So that means that you're locked into your Medicare Advantage plan at a time when you want access to specialists who are not perhaps in the network that your Medicare Advantage plan covers.
The full Code Wax story on ProgressiveVoices.com and on the PV app. Catch all our episodes by subscribing to Code Whack wherever you find your podcast. This podcast is powered by Heal California, a nonprofit that uplifts the voices of those fighting for health.
Call in, connect. To speak to Randi, call 561-270-3844. 561-270-3844.
The Green New Deal and the environment, which they say may affect us in 300 years, is all that is talked about. And yet nuclear weapons, which would destroy the world immediately, are never even discussed as a major threat. Can you imagine? They say the ocean will rise 1/8 of an inch over the next 200 to 300 years. But don't worry about nuclear weapons that can take out entire countries with one shot.
Oh my God, he is dark, man. He is literally. It's a dark comedy. This campaign, it really is. Now, I understand a lot of people are saying, well, I mean, it's just him and this is what he's going to do and da-da-da. You understand the way that the Republican primary system works, right? You understand it. So last time when he became the nominee, I think he did it with 35% of the vote, 35% of the vote. Because there were, 2,892 candidates that, split the vote so heavily that you could actually become the Republican nominee with 35% of the vote. That's likely to happen again. You understand? I mean, if we didn't have to go through a Republican primary with a third of the Republicans in this here country being white supremacist, white nationalist, Christian, white nationalist, whatever they're calling themselves now, if we didn't have to go through a Republican primary, I would say that, Liz Cheney could probably be a formidable Republican nominee to take on, Joe Biden or whoever the Democratic nominee ends up being in 2024, right? You would think, somebody like a Larry Hogan, who is, a very moderate Republican, the governor of, Maryland, or Liz Cheney, who obviously has a great love for the United States Constitution, but is also anti-choice and a whole lot of other things that Republicans would want in their nominee. But she can't make it through a primary, I don't think. You know what would be interesting, though, is if she did actually say, I need to be part of the Republican primary because I need to be on the stage. I need to be the fact check. I need to be the conscience of the Republican Party. I need to actually try to become the Republican nominee, even though we know that the Republican Party's primary voters are so crazy that they picked every election denier that they could to make them the Republican nominee for governor or the Republican nominee for Secretary of State or the Republican nominee for the House seat that was open or the Senate seat that was open. And they lost. They got their butts handed to them, okay, in a general election, because in a general election, you do see moderate Republicans and independents showing up. The independents and the moderate Republicans this particular election cycle voted for the Democrat. That's how we took the Senate, and that's how there's a raise. The House is likely going to, they're sitting at 217 Republicans right now with, 10 seats still uncalled. So the likelihood that the House is going to be at 218 for the Republicans is pretty good. It's a pretty good, likelihood. Of course, we could always go in there and pick off a couple, and see what we can do. And as sad as this is, every single 2 years, you have, House members who are in their upper 70s. Some of them are in their 80s, right? Crap happens. Just saying. So it's not really a solid majority. But the reason why this is the lay of the land is because the primary voters in the Republican Party are so nuts. They believe every conspiracy theory. I promise you last night they were watching the speech and nodding their heads and agreeing with the blood-stained, blood-soaked streets in the cities, and that the pain is just starting, and that he was the greatest president ever, even though the entire economy ended up being shut down, and he was the first president in the history of the presidency to leave office with fewer jobs than he inherited when he came into the presidency, and that they were sitting there listening to him talk about the impending doom of the world, nuclear weapons, and that there's only 1/8 of an inch of sea level rise that we're facing in the next 300 years, which is so garbagey. I mean, that's such crap. We're talking about 1 foot of sea level rise by 2030, okay? We're talking about, the whole world is seeing climate change. The whole world is and we've already felt it here, okay? The Mississippi River is so low right now that's part of the supply chain hiccups, okay? That's part of the problems that we have, is that there are barges that need to bring all this ag product through the United States up and down the Mississippi River. And the Mississippi River is so low that you need tugboats to go in there and hook up to the barges and try and drag them on through to make the deliveries. But he's saying, but I know there are people that are sitting there listening to this last night who have a casual relationship with the truth and a very deep relationship with conspiracy theories and a very deep relationship with, doom and anxiety, that they're believing everything he said. Those are the primary voters. Those are the ones. And so what I'm trying to explain to you is that while it is hilarious to watch him try to be a 4-time loser, which is likely what would happen if he got the nomination and ran for president again, it would be his 4th loss, okay? He'd be a 4-time loser, but he could win the Republican primary. He could. And you need to know that, because when you start to see the Republicans, declare themselves as candidates for the nomination, you're going to see a whole bunch of them. I mean, you're going to see probably, I'm guessing, no less than 10 of them, right? I hope one of them is Liz Cheney. I really do. She will never make it through the primary. She could never win the primary, but she could be the fly on the wall that keeps them honest. She could be the one that actually, argues the constitutionality of this president is just too bizarre an experience to go down that road again. But you're talking like probably Josh Hawley. You're talking Ted Cruz again. You're talking, some of the more moderate ones, maybe a Cheney, maybe a Larry Hogan, definitely a Ron DeSantis, who, is just as disgusting as Donald Trump in this way. He also, bullies children. He also is a book burner. He's also somebody who, doesn't believe in the First Amendment. He's an outside the Constitution operator. He's a person who believes in autocracy. He is that guy, okay? And he comes into a Republican primary with Florida on his side, right? So what do we have now? 27 electoral votes? I mean, it's a big damn state. And so he's going to, peel some votes off. And all these people running at the same time, it could lead to 35% of the craziest of the crazies voting for Donald Trump in a Republican primary. And Donald Trump becomes the Republican nominee again. And I'll tell you this right now, no one in America, I don't think anybody, I mean, maybe 3 people want to see a rematch of 2020. Maybe 3 people say, yeah, let's do Trump-Biden again. But this looks like it's possible. That's the crazy part. I watched him last night.
Clear for takeoff. Randi Rhodes. Randi Rhodes. Randi Rhodes. RandiRhodes.com.
What is politics about? MAGA Republicans believe it is all about chaos, owning the libs, white grievance and anger. That's wrong. Governing is about making our lives better. In just one piece of legislation, Democratic senators took action to lower prescription drug prices, giving Medicare the ability to negotiate with Big Pharma, shifted tax burden from the middle class to the very wealthy, protected our future with the most sweeping climate change action in U.S. history. What do you want? Anger or results?
Here's to the crazy ones, the misfits, the screamers, the criminals, the carnival barkers and their loyal clowns, the ones who don't like differences. They hate the rules and they have no respect for you. You can't reason with them or disagree with them. They glorify villains and vilify heroes. About the only thing you shouldn't do is ignore them, because they have a plan to push America backwards. And while some may see them as crazy, we know they're dangerous. Because if we don't fight, the people who are crazy enough to think they can stop progress will.
Glad to have a MAGA-packed Supreme Court? Proud that they lied under oath to get the job? If so, thank a MAGA Republican. If you enjoy seeing our rights disappear one by one, thank a MAGA Republican today. The Lincoln Project is responsible for the content of this advertising.
Hi, I'm Laura Flanders of The Laura Flanders Show, where I interview the best thinkers and doers of our time. On TV, the show premieres Sundays at 11:30 Eastern on PBS World and at the Laura Flanders Show YouTube channel. You can join my guests and me every week there in the live viewing party, and then catch us all week on public television stations. Prefer to listen? Find us on a radio station near you or subscribe to the free podcast. You'll find listings and ways to subscribe at lauraflanders.org. That's also where you'll receive my regular commentaries. I call them the F word. Here's this week's. Here's a term that's messing with our thinking: election denier. As the midterm race enters its final weeks, that phrase is turning up in political reporting as if election deniers were some sort of naturally occurring demographic group like redheads. But election deniers weren't born like redheads or southpaws. They were bred. Ideas travel through people. And so when you read a New York Times poll like the one released recently that showed 41% of Republicans and 28% of all the registered voters they polled have little or no faith in the results of this year's elections, that's no accident. People spread that doubt with intent. Likewise, we sometimes blame technology for the spread of hateful content and ideologies online. But when New York Attorney General Letitia James looked into the Buffalo Tups Market massacre, she ended up calling out one individual for having recorded the murderer's live stream of his attack and spreading that recording to the web. The massacre video didn't spread organically or by virtue of the technology or by itself. It spread because a person spread it, and that person had help. A.G. James's 5-month investigation, which was initiated by New York Governor Hochul, also revealed new details about the fringe message board 4chan, which posted the massacre tape before any other site and allowed 382 shares of it to stay up for weeks. 4chan moderators told investigators that violent and hateful content is openly permitted on some of their message boards, and the people behind 4chan took no responsibility for that. To underscore, it's no accident. Not nature, not the weather or God. People spread hateful ideas and corrosive content, and people who stand to profit. At 4chan, between the uploader and the spread, were the people who used specific algorithms to keep users on their platform by serving up content that kept them hooked. Likewise, in our politics, it sounds obvious to say, but certain people stand to profit from throwing doubt on our democracy. Elected officials.
Don't give up. Don't give up. What's true?
This is the Randi Rhodes Show. To speak with Randi, dial 561-270-3844. That's 561-270-3844.
I have said before, the gravest threats to our civilization are not from abroad, but from within.
You just said nuclear.
None is greater than the weaponization of the justice system, the FBI, and the DOJ. We must conduct a top-to-bottom overhaul to clean out the festering rot and corruption of Washington, D.C.
They really hate law enforcement. They really do.
Thank you.
Oh, good God.
And I'm a victim, I will tell you.
Oh, there you go.
I'm a victim. Think of it.
Think of it. I'm the victim. I'm the victim. He's always the victim. I've never seen a situation in which Donald Trump didn't play the victim, in which Donald Trump wasn't being wronged, in which Donald Trump, who stole classified documents, Donald Trump, who extorted Ukraine, Donald Trump, who incited a mob to attack the United States Capitol, Donald Trump, his company is on trial right now as we speak with the chief financial officer, Alan Weisselberg, pleading guilty to 15 felonies and offering his testimony in exchange for a plea agreement in which he actually said Donald Trump authorized me to commit fraud as the CFO of the Trump Organization. He literally testified to that yesterday under oath, but Donald Trump is somehow being victimized, somehow law enforcement holding him to account for breaking and violating our laws makes him a victim. Wow, it's unbelievable. And when you look at the propensity for people to believe that he's a victim in all this, and you look at the conspiracy theory believers in this country, and you realize it's always going to be a third of the country, and you understand that that's all it takes to become the Republican Party's nominee, you kind of realize that this guy, as hilarious as it was last night, as unbelievable as it is that he would want to be a four-time loser, is going to be the Republican nominee again. Because it only takes 35. I mean, first of all, everybody's hanging their hat on, Ron DeSantis, he's the new guy. He's 44 years old. Donald Trump is 78 years old. And here's another little factoid. Donald Trump can only be president one more term, right? Because he's already been president one term, and you were only allowed to have a president serve 2 terms. So Donald Trump, if he fights this all the way through and he gets the presidency, he can only be president for one more term, which makes him a lame duck on the day he starts. And that's why people are looking at Ron DeSantis. Ron DeSantis, well, he's 44 years old. He can be president for 2 terms. And, he hates the same people we hate, right? Because Ron DeSantis literally abused immigrants. He totally went to Texas, shopped for some, Venezuelans, definitely not Cubans. Don't send me Cubans. Colluded with, Texas Governor Abbott to pick out some Venezuelan immigrants and put them on a plane to Martha's Vineyard to abuse them. He runs roughshod over the First Amendment, DeSantis. He doesn't believe that we have the right to protest, you understand. He intervenes in the free market because if you disagree with him, you will be punished, bullying Disney, right, for criticizing his scaremongering about critical race theory, attacking our history, saying that, that he needs to use the power of the state in order to keep children from learning real American history, right? And he persecutes people he doesn't like. like LGBT students. I mean, this is who Ron DeSantis is. And it's not even clear whether or not he rejects the big lie because he's never answered the question whether he thinks the election was stolen or not. But he is the next authoritarian waiting in the wings. Donald Trump hates him, and is going to tear him apart with his base, okay? Just the same way that he took Ted Cruz apart, the same way that he took, Rubio apart, the same exact methodology. He's already threatening that he's got inside dirt on him, and he's going to release it and only his wife will know, I mean, this is what, so we don't really have an answer in the Republican Party for Donald Trump, and the Republican Party freaking knows that. And that's why Fox News cut away from him. They literally did Sean Hannity. Here's this.
Remember I sent to Angela? Remember Angela? Do you remember Angela? Nobody's remembering her now. Angela Merkel.
If you're just joining us, President Trump in Mar-a-Lago announcing his 2024 presidential run.
Cuts away. And then Lala comes in after him.
Al Capone got far less. Billy the Kid got almost done.
Billy.
Jesse James, no. Eric Trump got more subpoenas.
Now we're going to go back to former President Trump when news warrants.
They really, I'm guessing that they got marching orders from, corporate saying, no, we're not with Trump. We're not backing Trump. We don't want Trump. We don't want his face on your, you could take it, for the announcement and then cut away. Just cut away. We don't want, and all the money people, like the Schwarzmans of the world and the, what's his name? Ken Griffin, all the big money has put out statements today saying, no, it's time for new leadership, fresh leadership. And they're going to try and back Ron DeSantis. They are. And then you've got Glenn Youngkin, who is an election denier. You got coup plotters, Josh Hawley. You got a coup plotter, Ted Cruz, who tried to, push the big lie. Voted to acquit Trump twice, smears the FBI, smears the Justice Department. I think Ted Cruz wrote an entire book about, smearing the FBI, even though this guy here stole classified documents and kept them at Magaloco, right? So this is going to be, it'll be funny, but it's going to be tragic at the end. It's going to be like a Greek tragedy. Now, meanwhile, if the House is in Republican hands, which I'm almost 100% sure at this point that it will be, you know what they're going to do? They're going to try and dirty up Joe Biden. They're going to try and, have hearings about Joe Biden's son. That's all they're going to do. They're going to try and impeach Alex Mayorkas, the head of the Department of Homeland Security. They're gonna, stir up all this, this animosity toward immigrants again. They're going to say Hunter Biden is a crackhead over and over and over again until it somehow makes Joe Biden look like a crackhead. I don't know, but this is what they're going to do. They're going to spend their entire time dirtying up the Democrats. It's all they got. It's all they're going to do. So buckle up, everybody. We're in for the ride of our lives. Elgin in New York.
Randy.
Yes.
I'm calling to be educated. This is not just a rant. But I feel like Leon DiCaprio's character in The Departed, where he comes to Martin Sheen and he says, for the multitude of crimes that this guy has done, why are we even still talking about it? How can he be allowed? And explain this to me legally. How can he even be allowed to do anything on the political stage? If I had accidentally taken a fountain pen out of the White House, and I'm black, by the way, I would be under the jail by now.
I know. And I'm white, and I'd be under the jail. So, yeah, of course. So here's the thing, and it's really crazy, but it's true. The only qualifications for the presidency is 35 years old and a U.S. citizen, period. That's it. There are no qualifications. There is nothing in the Constitution that says that if you're under indictment or, you've been impeached twice, that you can't run again. Now, what it does say, though, in the 14th Amendment is that if you participated in an insurrection, then you can't hold an office of honor, right? And so we're going to have to, figure out whether or not Donald Trump is likely to come in guilty on, the Georgia case, whether or not he tried to defraud the United States, whether or not he incited an insurrection. And that's up to Merrick Garland. That's up to the Justice Department to do.
Right.
And that's it. That's all we got.
I'd like to say one last thing before I get off. And this is my rant about the Democrats. The Democrats, they act like these characters from Small Soldiers called the Gorgonites, who always lose. We're much too nice all of the time. We need to be hammering into the American people, talking about that he's a traitor, he's a traitor, he's a traitor, and just to keep that going. But we hate the name call.
But you know what?
Never do it.
Because it's not going to get us anywhere. It makes us as low as they are. What we've done is we've delivered, okay? We literally defended and protected the lives of struggling people through the pandemic. We actually invested in modernizing our infrastructure, not just talking about Infrastructure Week. We actually lowered the price of insulin, lowered the price of prescription drugs for older Americans. We actually put a minimum tax rate for multi-billion-dollar corporations in place, 15%. We actually lowered carbon emissions. We're reducing utility bills. That's how you win elections. That's how.
Randi Rhodes. Randi Rhodes. Randi Rhodes. RandiRhodes.com.
911, what's your emergency?
America's healthcare system is broken, and people are dying.
Welcome to Code Whack, where we shine a light on America's callous healthcare system, how it hurts us, and what we can do about it. I'm your host, Brenda Gazar. This time on Code Whack, what are some of the possible dangers and pitfalls of Medicare Advantage plans? And how do they respond to patients' needs differently compared to traditional Medicare? To find out, we spoke to Dr. Ed Weisbart, a retired family physician and a national board member of Physicians for a National Health Program.
So when Medicare pays your claims, as it does in original or traditional Medicare, Parts A and B, that's their only job, is to pay your claims. They don't get in the way. They're not trying to make money off of you. You have Medicare as your health insurance. You go to the doctor or hospital that you want, and Medicare pays your claims. But if you have opted into Medicare Advantage, Medicare itself is no longer paying your claims at all. Instead, Medicare is paying an insurance company to pay your claims. And the insurance company, as we all learned from having employer-based insurance and other things, is really not out to just pay your claims. They're out to make money off of this. And so the more often they can avoid paying your claims or deny paying your claims or delay paying your claims or make it complicated for anybody to get a claim paid, the more they can do that, the more money they can make. So they're no longer really focused on you. They're now focused on their own profits. And that's completely different than having the government just pay your claims, than having Medicare pay your claims.
The full Code Whack story on ProgressiveVoices.com and on the PV app. Catch all our episodes by subscribing to Code Whack wherever you find your podcast. This podcast is powered by Heal California, a nonprofit that uplifts the voices of those fighting for healthcare reform around the country. Until next time, stay healthy.
Now, the top of the hour on the Progressive Voices channel on TuneIn presents the Green News Report.
Definitely not a Republican wave, that's for darn sure.
Missing red wave in 2022 midterms is good news for the climate. Skyrocketing levels of climate warming methane, plus...
Don't be fooled. Prop 30 is being advertised as a climate initiative.
Mixed results for environmental ballot propositions.
All of those results and more straight ahead from BradBlog.com. I'm Brad Friedman.
And I'm Desi Doyen.
Stand by for 6 minutes of independent green news, politics, analysis, and snarky comment.
Newsom's ultimate victory is likely to be a landslide, which, since this is California, will be followed by an earthquake and a wildfire.
True story. This is your Green News Report. Okay, Desi Doyen, I'm happy to hear that the midterm elections were not a disaster for the climate.
Mm-hmm.
But speaking of disasters, Florida is once again in trouble.
Yes, a rare November hurricane, Hurricane Nicole, made landfall on Florida's east coast overnight Wednesday as a Category 1. Fueled by record warm ocean waters, the sprawling, slow-moving storm has brought significant rain and flooding to storm-weary parts of Florida, still damaged by deadly Hurricane Ian a month ago. President Biden has approved emergency disaster relief for the state. The National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration warns in a new report this week that levels of powerful climate-warming methane continue to rocket up at record rates, with concentrations now more than 160% of pre-industrial levels. A new report by the International Energy Agency reveals that globally, methane pollution from the fossil fuel industry is 70% higher than countries are officially reporting. The Global Methane Tracker also found that the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency is seriously underestimating the oil and gas industry's methane pollution by as much as 70%.
What's worse, carbon or methane?
They're both really bad, but methane is a more powerful climate-warming pollutant than carbon dioxide over a shorter time period, like 20 years.
Whereas carbon stays in the atmosphere for
like hundreds of years.
Got it.
Now on to the critical 2022 midterm elections. As we go to air, we still don't know who will control the U.S. House or Senate next year, with several close races not yet decided. But the corporate media's conventional wisdom of a Republican red wave did not materialize.
Shocking.
Some notable climate-related results. Republican climate science denier Senator Ron Johnson won re-election in Wisconsin.
Boo.
Pennsylvania's Democratic Lieutenant Governor and climate hawk John Fetterman soundly defeated Trump-endorsed TV doctor Mehmet Oz.
Yay.
In the U.S. House, despite heavy gerrymandering in Republican-controlled states, voters in Ohio flipped a seat held by longtime Republican climate science denier Representative Steve Chabot, giving it to Democrat Greg Landsman. North Carolina rejected a science-denying Republican to elect Democratic climate hawk Wiley Nickel.
North Carolina did that?
Yep, and in Illinois, Democrat Eric Sorensen will be the first meteorologist in Congress in 50 years.
Really?
Climate hawks also won top state offices in major wins for climate and clean energy. Massachusetts Attorney General Maura Healey, who is suing Big Oil to pay for climate damages, was elected Massachusetts' first female governor.
So I presume that whoever the new AG is will continue that lawsuit?
Presumably, yes. Maryland elected climate hawk Wes Moore as its first black governor, defeating Republican climate denier Dan Cox, who was labeled one of the worst environmental candidates in the nation by the League of Conservation Voters.
And he lost.
He lost big time. In remarks on Wednesday, President Biden thanked young voters for tipping the scales with record turnout across the country in state and federal races. And he warned Republicans,
I'm not going to walk away from the historic commitments we just made to take on the climate crisis. They're not compromisable issues to me, and I won't let it happen.
Nice.
Climate advocacy groups heralded the enormous organizing effort to mobilize young voters. Nonprofit climate group Evergreen Action said that actually delivering on bold, concrete climate investments like the Inflation Reduction Act are an electoral winner. Quote, just months after passing historic climate legislation, Democrats across the country have defied historic trends and achieved one of the best midterms for a sitting president's party in recent memory. And finally, results from statewide climate and environment ballot initiatives were mixed. Voters in California appear to have rejected a proposition that would have raised taxes on millionaires to fund the transition to electric vehicles after Democratic Governor Gavin Newsom labeled it a Trojan horse giveaway to a rideshare company. Florida voters rejected a tax break for property owners that harden their properties against flooding and rising sea levels. However, New Yorkers approved a $4 billion state bond measure to upgrade the state's infrastructure against climate impacts and rising seas.
Nice. For much more on all of these stories and the ones we couldn't get to today, check out our website at greennews.bradblog.com. I'm Brad Friedman.
And I'm Desi Doyen.
And this has been your Green News Report.
Please help Progressive Voices support the Green News Report. by stopping by bradblog.com/donate.
Mary had a little lamb.
We believe that all men are created equal.
To the magnificent mosaic that is America.
From radio beacon to radio beacon. I have a dream. Change has come to America.
Believe me.
Help is on the way.
Knock, knock. Who's there?
It's a figment of your imagination.
Randi Rhodes Show.
Turn up your mind.
Donald Trump has spent 2 years attacking American elections, but now he's hoping voters will return him to power.
In order to make America great and glorious again, I am tonight announcing my candidacy for President of the United States.
Surrounded by loyalists and members of his Mar-a-Lago club in Palm Beach, Florida, Trump largely stuck to the script written by his advisors, boasting about his record as president, attacking Joe Biden, and for the most part, staying clear of the election lies voters soundly rejected in the midterm elections.
America's comeback starts right now.
Some fellow Republicans have blamed Trump for the party's failure to win big in the midterms. Trump acknowledged Republicans should have done better, but he said that was because Americans don't yet realize how bad things are under Joe Biden.
The citizens of our country have not yet realized the full extent and gravity of the pain our nation is going through, and the total effect of the suffering is just starting to take hold.
Trump's candidacy is clouded by multiple criminal investigations and lawsuits, from the investigation into the classified documents he took from the White House to a New York criminal investigation into his company. Just hours before he announced his campaign, Trump's longtime chief financial officer, Alan Weisselberg, took the stand, describing how the company schemed to avoid paying taxes.
Whoops.
Like many other Republicans, New Hampshire Governor Chris Sununu greeted Trump's announcement with a shrug.
Whatever announcements may or may not be happening tonight, frankly, nobody's going to care.
But not long after Trump started speaking, President Biden posted a video portraying him as a threat to America.
We will treat those people from January 6th fairly, and if it requires pardons, we will give them pardons.
There were some notable absences at Trump's big announcement in Mar-a-Lago. There were no members of Congress there except for Madison Cawthorn, who is about to leave Congress because he lost re-election. No governors. And Donald Trump Jr. wasn't there. He was out west hunting and said he had a hard time getting a flight back due to weather. And Ivanka Trump, the president's daughter, was not there. She put out a statement after the announcement saying, "While I will always love and support my father, going forward, I will do so outside the political arena." Remember, George, she was a big part of his last campaigns and his White House.
Yes, because she already got her payday. Her husband got $2 billion from the Saudis, who, are doing absolutely nothing to help us in the midst of a, global recession or global inflation. But, okay. And also she got her Chinese patents while she was senior advisor to the president of the United States, who happened to be her daddy. Oh, my God. Well, they're going to spend all their time in the House of Representatives not doing anything to make your life better. They're not going to do anything to, allow for the rest of us to negotiate, like our insurance carriers, to negotiate the price of prescription drugs or insulin that, we have to pay. No, they're not going to do that. They're going to sit there and say that Hunter Biden is your problem. Somehow Hunter Biden, where Jared walked away with $2 billion from a government that literally dismembered a man with a bone saw, literally dismembered him, cut his arms and legs off and put him in a garbage bag. Okay. But that's not an impediment for, to stop doing business with them if you're Jared, right? So he took $2 billion from them. But we're going to focus on whether or not Hunter Biden, lied on an application to get a handgun. Right, because that's what is the impediment to our progress, whether or not Hunter Biden lied on an application to get a handgun. Like I said, I could save them all these hours of time in their hearings. The answer is, yeah, he did. Okay, move on. But, no. And so how do you win elections? Well, obviously, the insulin cap, the $35 insulin cap for seniors, Medicare, that hasn't even taken hold yet. That's not even in place. These things don't even occur until 2023. In 2023, you will start to see, the results of the Inflation Reduction Act. You will start to see some of the benefits that were, that were negotiated in this bill and passed and signed into law. We haven't even seen the lower drug prices for older Americans yet. We haven't seen the corporations pay their 15% minimum tax. Okay, we haven't seen the completion of the semiconductor factories yet, right? So we're just starting the construction on a lot of infrastructure projects, right? So it's all going to get so much better going forward. But Donald Trump would have you believe that, the suffering has just begun. And no, the suffering is over because you left. Because you left and you stopped telling people to take hydroxychloroquine or to shine UV lights up their bum as a cure for COVID. We actually went out there and got, millions, hundreds, tens of millions of people vaccinated. And now the death rate from COVID is down by like 99%. It's unbelievable. He talked a great game, but, about infrastructure. It's Infrastructure Week. It became a joke. Every week was Infrastructure Week. We actually passed an infrastructure package. And you know what's going to pass the Senate now? Oh, it already did. So they voted in the Senate whether or not they, it's called cloture, to see if they had 60 votes to end the debate on the Respect for Marriage Act. And if you have 60 votes to end debate on the Respect for Marriage Act, then you can go ahead and vote on the Respect for Marriage Act and know that you're going to have 60 votes to pass it. That just happened. The final tally is 62 to 37. There are 62 votes to pass the Respect for Marriage Act, which, by the way, now says that gay marriage performed in one state must be respected by the other states that don't really want to respect gay marriage, but now they have to. And it also protects interracial marriages from being torn asunder by Clarence Thomas of all people. What a sick country we have. I mean, the self-loathing in this country is really off the chain. I mean, it's just, whoa, the amount of self-hatred that there is. But anyway, so let's see. It looks like Roy Blunt, Richard Burr, Capito, Collins, of course, Loomis, Portman, bye-bye. Mitt Romney, I guess he got permission from the Mormon Church. I saw that in the newspaper today. The Mormon Church said, it's time that we respect all marriages, including the gay ones. And so they gave permission to the Mormon members of the Congress to go ahead and codify same-sex marriage. So Romney was a yes. Sullivan, Tillis, Joni Ernst, well, when she's not castrating pigs, she has time to vote for gay marriage. And Don Young from Alaska. No, it can't be Don Young. He's dead. Who's Young? I don't know. All right, Casey in West Palm.
Hey, Randy, long time. How you been? Hope everything's well with you. My question to you is, I've been listening to conservative radio the last couple of days, and the biggest things they're trying to circle their wagons like they had the biggest wins or whatever, and they're saying the first two things they're going to do is go after Hunter Biden and go after the Afghanistan when we pulled out of Afghanistan. That's their priorities. My question to you is, if that's the case, can they, even though things are going with January 6th, can they stop the January 6th committee completely?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So what do we have to do? So what do we need to do because we only got much time.
Okay,
a couple months?
So the January 6th committee never had the authority to indict anybody or prosecute anybody. All they did was fact-finding. That's it. The DOJ has to indict Donald Trump for insurrection or for trying to defraud the United States by depriving us of the certification or attacking Congress. That's Merrick Garland. That's where that is now. The January 6th committee never had the authority to indict anybody criminally, ever. The House doesn't have that authority. They can't do that. They could barely enforce their own subpoenas. They have to go to court. And then, there's a delay, and then the court says, all right, we'll hear it next year, and then a year later. You know what I mean? That's not the House.
Clear for takeoff. Randi Rhodes. RandiRhodes.com.
America's political, corporate, and media establishments were cocksure about their prognostications that a powerful red wave was about to hit America in this month's elections. It would sweep Democrats out and push Republicans into office all across America, they exclaimed. How shocking and embarrassing, then, that their raging wave turned out to be just a little ripple. Republicans ran poorly and many Democrats ran well. Still, the Democratic Party as a whole should have done better if its don't-rock-the-boat leadership had been gutsier, more progressive, and, yes, more democratic. Well, murmur the party's Washington hierarchy, we can't get too far ahead of the people. Really? Why not ask the people themselves? That's the virtue of the ballot initiative system. It allows grassroots groups to put issues up for a vote, rather than letting the public agenda be controlled by a clique of lobbyists, legislators, and party line followers. This year, there were 132 of these initiatives on the ballots in 37 states, and more on local ballots. And vote after vote showed that the people are way ahead of the political insiders in support of strong progressive policies. By big margins, 3 states said to hell with a Republican Supreme Court enshrining women's abortion rights in their state constitutions. South Dakota, supposedly a right-wing bastion, shoved their GOP governor and legislators aside to expand Medicaid health coverage to the state's low-income families. In bright red Nebraska, nearly 60% of voters said yes to a $15 minimum wage. A big majority in Illinois amended the state constitution to guarantee collective bargaining rights for workers. 70% of New Mexico voters made funding of early childhood education a constitutional requirement. This is Jim Hightower saying, for more information, go to ballotpedia.org.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 2006. That was the day mounted police charged 50 janitors and their supporters during a protest in Houston. SEIU's Justice for Janitors campaign had been organizing for years throughout the South and Southwest. Modeled on success achieved in California, SEIU broadened their campaign to Houston and Miami. The union called a month-long strike against the city's largest cleaning companies. Protests and civil disobedience actions continued throughout the strike. Hundreds of strikers routinely marched through the streets of Houston, beating drums and hauling bags of garbage into the middle of intersections to highlight the key services they provided to the city. They were subject to repeated threats of firings and arrests. When police charged at the janitors, it served to turn public support in favor of the strikers. By the end of the month, Tom Balinoff and SEIU Local 1 in Chicago claimed victory for 5,300 Houston janitors. The Chicago local had been central to the 3-year campaign in Houston. Incomes doubled and janitors finally had health insurance, paid vacations, and holidays. The Chicago Tribune detailed the campaign in a November 25th article. The union lobbied building owners and major corporations who held contracts with the cleaning companies. The union worked to gain a foothold among the janitors, sending in seasoned Latino janitors from Chicago to help with organizing. SEIU committed millions of dollars to the organizing drive, setting aside $1 million alone in strike funds. At a victory rally, union leader Flor Aguiar proclaimed, "No one thought a group of poor Latinos from Houston would be able to win anything. But today, we can lift our heads up very high." For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com, like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter at laborhistoryin2.
I watched it on TV.
All things Randy at RandiRhodes.com.
Go for launch.
Speaking truth to power, the Randi Rhodes Show.
Look at what's happening and what he's doing, not just through a political lens, but through the basic facts of his total lack of fitness for office. He's unstable. The January 6th committee has laid out very clearly his direct and personal involvement in every aspect of the plan to overturn the last election. He's, someone who, knowing that the mob was armed, sent them to march on the Capitol to try to stop the count of electoral votes. And then while that bloody battle was underway at the Capitol, despite everyone around him pleading with him to tell the mob to stop and go home, he wouldn't do it. He sat and watched it on television. So there's no question that he's unfit for office, and I feel confident that he will never be president again.
So she obviously knows the evidence that was delivered to Merrick Garland at the Department of Justice that the January 6th committee was able to uncover. She's seen the thousands of text messages. She's seen the emails. She's seen all of the machinations behind the scenes, everything that we saw, plus more. And Merrick Garland has all that material. Now, just be very clear, the House of Representatives cannot indict somebody. They are a legislative branch. They are not a judicial branch. They do have inside of the legislative branch of the House of Representatives a judiciary committee, but that's just to hear matters that affect the judiciary. That's just to hear matters of how many, how many judges or justices should be on this court or that court. You know what I mean? But they're not there to enforce the law. That is the judicial branch, and the Department of Justice is at the top of that food chain. And so it's really up to Merrick Garland to bring charges if he feels that there's there are criminal charges that Donald Trump can be charged with, like seditious conspiracy or incitement to an insurrection or defrauding or attempt to defraud the American people out of the results of a free and fair election. You don't even have to be successful in subverting an election. It is a crime to try to subvert the results of an election. It's called defrauding the United States, and you don't have to succeed in your attempt to defraud. Okay. Now, also there are other ancillary criminal charges that are pending. If you're looking for a little joy about Donald Trump today, like you want him to have his just desserts. You are a law and order person, and you want to see it equally administered. Likely, the result of this fraud trial that Weisselberg is testifying in as a result of his plea deal, where he swore that he would tell the truth about the fraud that went on for 15 years inside of the Trump organization with regard to him, Weisselberg, being authorized to defraud the state of New York, to defraud the United States of its tax dollars by getting paid with things like free rent, by getting paid by things like Donald Trump paying for the lease on 2 Mercedes-Benz while he lived on the Upper West Side, or Donald Trump, didn't pay him the salary that he wanted because it would have been double the value of the rent, because then he would have been taxed on it. And so they conspired together to perpetuate and pursue fraud, tax fraud. That's what Weisselberg is testifying to. Now, when the judge actually, finds that the Trump organization engaged in tax fraud repeatedly for 15 years, he just might dissolve the Trump organization. So Donald Trump might lose his entire company as a result of being a tax cheat. That could happen. Now, will that keep him from running for president? It should in a normal democracy, but in this one, no, it won't. He can run. He can run, as an indicted felon. He can run as a felon. There is nothing that says that a felon can't be the president of the United States. There's nothing in there. The only qualifications for president is that you're 35 years old and an American citizen. That is it. That is it. The rest we're trusted with. The rest of the judgment about who should or could or will be president, we're entrusted with that decision. We're allowed to choose. We're allowed to pick. The only exception is the 14th Amendment exception that says that if you participated in an insurrection against this country, then you cannot hold an office of honor or trust. And that would be the presidency. It would also be a CEO. It would also be, running a charity. It would be those kinds of things. But unless and until Merrick Garland feels that he is free of elections, which he doesn't, because we have the Georgia, we still have the Herschel Walker situation to deal with in Georgia. Not that it's going to affect who gets control of the Senate. Already today, Mitch McConnell has been chosen by his, caucus, by his, Republican senators to be the minority leader yet again. He's 80 years old. You know what that means? It means that Mitch McConnell will probably die or leave this planet or leave the Senate as minority leader at 86 years old. Sad, but true. So Mitch McConnell is the minority leader. They've already decided, and they already accepted the results of the election, and the Senate will stay in Democratic hands. Now, we do have an election, though. That's just a fact. We have the Georgia election, and that's Warnock against Walker. And, of course, there's another crazy person. I mean, he is nuts. I would say that this little clip I'm about to play of Herschel Walker is word salad, but that's an insult to words and salads.
I can promise you, Iran, Russia, and they're not talking about trying to charge a tank out in the desert. They're talking about war. And let me tell you this here. If we was ready for the green agenda, I'll raise my hand right now, but we're not ready right now. So don't let them fool you like this is a new agenda. This is not the new agenda. We're not prepared. We're not ready right now. What we need to do is keep having those gas guzzling cars because we got the good emission under those cars. We're doing the best thing that we can, but we need help. We need help, and those other people not helping us. China not helping us. India not helping us, but yeah, we're going to do it all because they're spending your money.
As you can see, there were dozens of people, a dozen, at his rally. And like I said, you can characterize that as a complete and utter word salad or garbage, but that's an insult to words, salad, and garbage.
I couldn't help that scene reminding me of like the old-timey fairs where it'd be like, here, look at the strong man and the bearded woman, and now the most unqualified candidate ever. Watch as he spews nonsense.
It's a freak show.
It's a freak show. They're just gawking at him.
It is. It's a complete and utter freak show. Now, like I said, if whoever got the most votes won in Georgia, then we would have Senator Warnock right now because he clearly won. But he didn't get to 50%. He got to like 49.2 or some crazy, just a touch below 50. And so now there's an election, okay? There's a runoff. And because of that, the 60-day rule that the Department of Justice observes is back in play. And so it won't be till after December 6th when the election is done that we can expect Merrick Garland to make his plans known about indicting Trump.
Clear for takeoff. Randi Rhodes. RandiRhodes.com.
This is Stephanie Miller, and here's what you missed.
They're saying could be a Category 1 by the end of the day. However, let me tell you what is the storm, that red wave. I'm telling you, if there's any indication based upon what we're seeing this morning, somebody made a surfboard, said the red wave is coming.
Oh, boy.
This whole show has been of just me and being Muttley.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Oh, where's our surf music, Chris?
Oh, okay.
Cowabunga.
Surf's up. Cowabunga. How's that red wave going? You know what the wave is? Me drinking mega salty tears. Oh, they're so delicious. Oh, you're pouring more?
I think this is the wrong song. We should have used Wipeout.
I'm not driving. You know what I did yesterday? I don't ever do it. I watched Fox News. Oh my God, I've never had so much fun in my whole... You know, I can't. I'm too tender.
Oh,
I make
know.
you do it. I can't do it.
You did it for a change, huh?
Oh, I did.
Is it heaven? Was it everything you hoped it would be?
I never thought I would enjoy Fox News so much. Oh, it was fantastic. Oh, it was better than sex. It was fantastic. Okay. Wait, I might not be able to speak. Did I mention we won the Senate? Oh, God. Okay.
The Herschel Walker race is going to get real fun right now.
Oh, my God. Has he already roadkill? Have they left poor Herschel at the bus stop?
There's a really good chance that we could come out of this with even more senators than we had before.
I know. We beat.
Oh, my God. Oh, my God. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I'm having way too much fun. Oh, my God. I'm going to be, if you think this is insufferable, I'm just getting warmed up because what have I said? What have I said? Same thing. Michael Moore, Jody Hamilton are saying we're going to win the House. You just wait.
Hear all this and more on the next Stephanie Miller Show.
He was elected overwhelmingly at a dark time. Years of chaos, hate, our politics used as a wedge to divide, not a common cause to unite. Democracy attacked. Joe Biden stepped forward as president for every American. These are difficult days. Years of pandemic, war in Europe driving world energy prices up, a radical Supreme Court majority, the Republican Party embracing autocracy, rejecting any positive change. There are no easy answers, no quick fixes. But in just 18 months, President Biden is making our lives better. A record 6.6 million jobs added in the first year. 600,000 manufacturing jobs. Unemployment at a historic low. Wages rising at a record pace. After years of Republican failure, President Biden is rebuilding America's infrastructure.
We've stared into the abyss of insurrection and autocracy.
Thousands of jobs, 90% no college degree needed.
And we, the people, did not flinch.
President Joe Biden.
It's never, ever, ever been a good bet to bet against America.
He's working for America.
And it still isn't.
What's your emergency?
America's healthcare system is broken and people are dying.
Welcome to Code WACK, where we shine a light on America's callous healthcare system, how it hurts us, and what we can do about it. I'm your host, Brenda Gazar. This time on Code WACK, what pitfalls does Medicare Advantage pose? And what is the Medigap trap that many people are unwittingly falling into?
Don't give up. Don't give up. What's true?
Call in, connect. To speak to Randy, call 561-270-3844. 561-270-3844.
All right, everybody. Here's the Senate Minority Leader, Mitch McConnell.
We underperformed among independents and moderates.
Yes.
Because their impression of many of the people in our party in leadership roles is that they're involved in chaos.
Yes.
Negativity.
Yes.
Excessive attacks. And it frightened independent and moderate Republican voters. And we saw that, which is why you all recall I never predicted a red wave. We never saw that in any of our polling in the states that we were counting on to win. There was no wave.
There was
we
no
had
wave.
national issue set that was favorable.
Huh.
But as a result of our own, the perception many of them had that we were not dealing with issues in a responsible way and that we were spending too much time on negativity and attacks and chaos, they were frightened. And so they pulled back. We, in two states, for example, got just crushed by independent voters, Arizona and New Hampshire. So we learned some lessons about this, and I think the lesson's pretty clear. Senate races are different. Candidate quality, you recall I said in August, is important. And in most of our states, we met that test. In a few of them, we did not.
Yeah. The reason why you're a minority leader and not majority leader is because you stayed silent in the face of all these attacks, in the face of all this chaos, in the face of all this election denial, in the face of all these conspiracy theories. You didn't intervene. You didn't say enough is enough. You didn't say a word. You saw an insurrection. You got on the Senate floor. You said this is unacceptable. And then you sat back, relaxed, and saw whether or not the American people would tolerate such stuff. Whether or not the American people would tolerate the beating of police officers, 140 of them injured. Whether or not the American people would demand to get to the bottom of who organized it, who paid for it, who wanted it, who watched it, who did nothing while it was going on. That's your problem. See, that's Mitch McConnell. Mitch McConnell is like, listen, I'm 80 years old. I could be the majority leader. I could be the minority leader. I don't care. I've already ruined America. I've already got my 3 picks on the Supreme Court that American women will have to live with for the next 50 years. And we rejected those decisions too, Mitch. We rejected every single part of the Republican agenda in favor of reducing utility bills, in favor of canceling student debt for 40 million Americans, in favor of negotiating the price of prescription drugs through the Medicare program, even though every single freaking dime that you count on every year from Big Pharma is in jeopardy. Your mic's on. Josh in Miami.
Hi, Randy.
Hi.
I was curious, what it would take for Congress to pass some ethics rules on the Supreme Court to hold them accountable, make them recuse themselves, and things like that.
Well, first it would take a Democratic majority, which we won't have. So there you go.
Oh wow, it's the same issue, huh?
Yeah, I mean, removing or impeaching or passing legislation, it all depends on who holds the majority, right? And we don't have the majority in the House unless, we can find a couple of 3, decent Republicans. Go look for a David Jolly, who retired, or Charlie Dent, who retired because of this madness, right? And and instead of saying, yeah, you should just retire because this is the way it's going to be in this party, say, hey, we got a better deal over here. You come from a swing state and you got lots of independents and you've got lots of moderate Republicans who will vote for you as a Democrat. Look, we just saw that happen. Right. Brian in Pennsylvania.
Hey, Randy, how you doing?
All right.
I got a question. I realize the circus that the Republicans in the House are going to create once they take power.
Yep.
And, with the Biden and everything, the Hunter Biden and checking out the FBI and all that. But my question is, down the road, is there anything that they can do to do real damage by, like, the certification of the next election? Or will their term expire by the time that they can do that?
No, this is the Congress that will get us through the 2024 election.
Yeah, see, that's the worry that I have.
You should.
What exactly.
That's why I'm literally leaning on the idea of being able to convert a couple of 3 moderate Republicans who see the results of this election and understand that moderate Republicans and independents, as Mitch McConnell just told you, switched parties. They voted for Democrats instead of the chaos candidates. They voted for Democrats instead of the attack candidates. They voted for Democrats because the Republicans took away rights. Literally were banning books and bullying children and taking away a woman's right to choose and denying free and fair elections could be held in the United States. So it is possible that we could see some, converts, like a Jim Jeffords. Remember back in the day, Jim Jeffords was a Republican, became an independent. Same thing with, what's his name? I just blanked out on his name. Lieberman, Joe Lieberman. He left the Democratic Party, right, and became an independent. So, people do actually have enough. They actually say, look, I've had enough of this. I don't want an R after my name because there is no R party that I relate to that, does anything for my constituents. And my whole point of being a governor, meaning, a House member, my whole point of, being in the House is to, help Americans counter the high costs or create well-paying jobs or, keep unemployment at a historically low 3.7% or, make home ownership more affordable, not less, or lower, right. So there could be some converts. There could be some.
I hope so.
I
really
do too. I do too. But, they're going to have to go through their data. And they're going to have to look and see what are their prospects for getting reelected 2 years from now if they leave the Republican Party and become an independent or become a Democrat. And when they decide that it is in their best interests to hold on to their power to leave the party, they will do it.
Yeah, we'll just keep our fingers crossed. Okay.
That's kind of where I'm at. I'm just right there too.
All right, Randy, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you
for all you do.
Oh,
to
thanks for
educate us
calling.
all.
Thank you for calling. I appreciate you too. Hold on, Glenn. I shouldn't have taken your call. So we have that chance. Because, like I said, okay, right now it looks like 207 Democrats to 217 Republicans. So there's 11 races yet to be called. 11. So all they need is one more to get to 218, which is the magic number in the House for a majority. Maybe they'll get to, with 11, maybe they'll get to 220. And that would leave us having to deal with 2 or 3 Republicans who can somehow be talked into helping us be the majority party because it's better for their constituents.
Clear for takeoff. Randi Rhodes. Randi Rhodes. Randi Rhodes. RandiRhodes.com.
Vice President Mike Pence calls his wife Karen mother, and sometimes mother. Mother does not allow father to attend events with alcohol without her being present. Mother does not allow father to have dinner with another woman. In fact, mother does not allow father to be alone in a room with another woman. Mother is an art teacher at Emmanuel Christian School, which requires employees to affirm in writing that they will not engage in homosexual sexual acts or have a transgender identity. Father's epic homophobia made him sign into law in Indiana the Religious Freedom Restoration Act, which encouraged and condoned the aggressive discrimination of gays and lesbians. Around the White House, mother is known as the bulldog and father as the pleaser. Father was placed in charge of the coronavirus response on February 26th. The 5 months that followed, more than 170,000 Americans have died. Mother and father both oppose gay marriage. In interviews, father obsessively praises Trump's broad shoulders, and cameras have repeatedly caught him looking at Trump like Cinderella. Some senators call Pence Trump's fourth wife. An official from the Reagan administration said, "I'd like my wife to look at me just for one day the way Mike Pence looks at President Trump every day they're together." Father wrote about how disgusted he was with the Republican Party because they allowed HIV-positive people to speak at the 1996 convention. Father supported the use of federal funding to treat people, quote, seeking to change their sexual behavior, unquote, otherwise known as gay conversion therapy. Father praises himself as an uber Christian, but was caught stealing campaign donations for his first congressional race and used the money to pay his mortgage, credit card bills, and even fees for golf tournaments. Meet Mike and Karen, father and mother. They're just weird AF.
A boy's best friend is his mother.
My country, 'tis of thee, sweet land of liberty, of thee I sing. Land where my fathers died, land of the Pilgrim's pride. From every mountainside, let freedom ring.
Excited to see members of Congress incite violence against law enforcement, enjoy armed insurrections, and the big lie? If so, thank a MAGA Republican. If you think election results should only count when Republicans win, thank a MAGA Republican today. The Lincoln Project is responsible for the content of this advertising.
Hi, I'm Laura Flanders of The Laura Flanders Show, where I interview the best thinkers and doers of our time. On TV, the show premieres Sundays at 11:30 Eastern on PBS World and at the Laura Flanders Show YouTube channel. You can join my guests and me every week there in the live viewing party, and then catch us all week on public television stations. Prefer to listen? Find us on a radio station near you or subscribe to the free podcast. You'll find listings and ways to subscribe at lauraflanders.org. That's also where you'll receive my regular commentaries. I call them the F word. Here's this week's. Here's a term that's messing with our thinking: election denier. As the midterm race enters its final weeks, that phrase is turning up in political reporting as if election deniers were some sort of naturally occurring demographic group like redheads. But election deniers weren't born like redheads or southpaws. They were bred. Ideas travel through people. And so when you read a New York Times poll like the one released recently that showed 41% of Republicans and 28% of all the registered voters they polled have little or no faith in the results of this year's elections, that's no accident. People spread that doubt with intent. Likewise, we sometimes blame technology.
Fatality. This is the Randi Rhodes Show. To speak with Randi, dial 561-270-3844. That's 561-270-3844.
I think this is the most ironic and hysterical portion of Herschel Walker's little get-together on the street there with, a dozen people at his rally.
And then he even paid himself for child care, all that stuff. Why don't he keep his own kids? Don't have nobody else keeping your kids. You keep your kids. Then you got somebody else keeping. I keep my own, even though he lied about me. But it's okay. It's okay because he's trying to get your vote. Don't let him trick you, try to get your vote.
It's like a carnival barker, man. I keep my kids. He has 4 children with 4 different baby mamas. His own son is all over TikTok saying that he is an absentee landlord when it comes to fatherhood. And he's lecturing people on a street corner there like some guy who needs a tinfoil hat saying, why don't you keep your kids? I keep my kids. It is so ridiculous that this is the situation that Georgians find themselves in. But it is. And because a guy like that can get 48% of the vote in Georgia? Oh my God. Because a guy like that can get 48% of the vote in Georgia, we can't see the president of the former president of the United States face the bar of justice for inciting an insurrection and an attack on our Capitol because there's respect for the election cycle. I wish my cycle got some respect. I mean, this is an amazing cycle. Like everything must come to a screeching halt, including the administration of justice in America when there's an election.
Do you think it could be perceived that maybe Walker's nomination is more of a statement on Georgia than it is on America as a whole?
No, I think it's a statement on Republicans more than it's a statement on anything. It's a statement on the Republican Party just craving and wanting and being aggressive about trying to have and hold power. They don't care about the results of holding or having power. They just care about having it. And so they thought that if they held their nose, and voted for Herschel Walker, there was a chance that they could have the Senate too. But running candidates like that literally turned off the rest of the electorate. And we elected ourselves a Democratic Senate. Now, the House, like I said, it's razor thin. It could have gone either way. It is shocking to me, I tell you, that Paul Gosar got to run unopposed in Arizona, that Andy Biggs got to run unopposed in Arizona. I mean, this is really, if you want to drill down on whose fault it is the fault of the Democratic Party, that we don't compete the way that we should, and that's in all 435 districts. That's not that much. When you consider that there's 435 members of the House, that means there's 435 districts. Why can't this national party, this giant national party that's just full of cash? I mean, the Republicans have more, but we've got tons of cash. Why can't we be active in districts? Why can't we say there's a crazy man whose own family says he's irresponsible, he's ill, okay? We don't know what he has, but he obviously has dyskinesia, tardive dyskinesia. I mean, Gosar cannot hold his body still. We don't know if it's because he's taking Parkinson's medication or because he's got some other mental illness that he takes medication for to keep that in check, and that causes tardive dyskinesia. No one knows because he won't tell you. He's not, above board about what's going on with him, but we do know that his family has said he's a white supremacist. We do know that his family has said that you should not vote for our brother. He is an irresponsible creature of power. He is a white supremacist, a Nazi-loving, dangerous, freaking guy. And he was allowed to run unopposed. I mean, if I thought that I would get the support of the National Party, oh, me and the Democrats, that's funny. But if I thought that, that I would get the kind of support that I would move to Arizona. I would move to his freaking district and I would run against him myself. But that's not going to happen because that's not the kind of support that you get. And it's a damn shame because we have some of the most bizarre people, just strange creatures. I will say hats off to Marcus Flowers, who gave it everything he had and ran against Marjorie Taylor Greene in Georgia. But people were going to vote for Kemp, and they just voted their straight ticket. That's what they did. They held their nose and they voted for Herschel Walker. And the reason why they voted for Kemp is because Kemp was not a Trumper. So when you ask me about, is it more of a commentary on Georgia, you have to actually see that Georgians chose Kemp simply because Kemp stood up to Donald Trump. So that's to their credit. Andy in L.A.
Hey, Randy, how you doing?
Good. How are you?
I'm fine, thanks. I haven't called you in a long time, but I listen to you all the time, and I love you.
Thank you.
What I wanted to say was, and I haven't heard you or anybody else really talk about this, but when that crazy orange lunatic uses the word glorious, he wants to make America glorious, that's the way Kim Jong-un talks. That's the way Putin talks. That's the way
autocrats talk.
Dictators, when they talk about,
right.
When they talk about glorious, that's terrifying.
Yeah, it's not the American way of presenting the United States, right? But that's what he signaled.
No,
but that's how he signals to his lunatic fringe that he's still part of the lunatic fringe. It's all about that. Listen, Jason Miller, there's no doubt in my mind, wrote that. There's no doubt, and that man he's a self-loathing Jew. He is a literal white supremacist, and I don't think he realizes that when push comes to shove, he's not included in their glorious dream.
Are you talking about Jason Miller or Stephen Miller?
Stephen, sorry, Stephen. Yeah, the Millers. Yeah, no, Stephen Miller.
Yeah. I agree with you there. Yeah. That is exactly who he is.
Right, and I don't know why he doesn't realize that he's not going to pass. Okay, he thinks he can pass. He's not going to pass. Every person of color in this audience knows exactly what I'm talking about. Okay, but he's not going to make the cut when the Nazis actually start their in fascism. He's gone too. Ben Shapiro too. These are some very strange people. Very, very, very strange. Like I said,
and very, very sick. I mean, they're so anti-Semitic, this movement, that these guys, the Shapiros and the Stephen Millers, what are they doing?
Don't know. I mean, anything in the name of, getting power back, anything at all, including, be self-loathing, including put your own tribe in jeopardy, put your own people in harm's way. They just don't care. People aren't, people are just, pawns in their great game. They're not real.
Yeah.
So it's sad, but that's who they are. But you're right. The word glorious was it was a stunner, and it was right off the bat. It was right at the open. And
right
Stephen Miller wrote that. He did.
Of course he did.
And he did it for the exact reason that made you have chills. He did it to signal to the crazy base, the fascist base, the autocratic base, the dictatorship wanting base, that they're still part of it.
Yeah, absolutely. Anyway, keep doing what you're doing, Randy. I love you.
Thank you. Thanks for calling me today. I appreciate it. Glenn in Washington State.
Randy, I think I see what's going to happen here. He's got his plane all refurbished, and by declaring his candidacy, the money that he's collected before now was probably overseas somewhere, and by declaring his candidacy, he can travel up and down the East Coast, and I think rally in and whatever, and I think we're going to wake up before December 7th and find out that he's halfway across the ocean to Saudi Arabia.
Oh, good God.
And then we won't have any recourse because they have no extradition treaty with us. And so, I don't know.
Russia either. We have no extradition treaty with Russia. I would think he would rather go there.
Well, Abu Dhabi or whatever it is, it's pretty luxurious, you know.
It's gold.
Yeah, so I think that's what's going to happen, and we won't be able to touch him because DOJ didn't act in time.
That's fine.
What they need to do is...
That's fine. You know what? They could indict him in absentia, and then he can't run for president, and he can go live the rest of his days on the sly, on the lam, on the, in incognito, whatever, in Saudi. Let him do it. Let him do it. Bye-bye. Let him do it.
Yeah, well, his company is going to be dissolved, like you said, and that'll be the end of that.
I hope. But, he has raised over $100 million in these super PACs that he hasn't spent, which is fascinating. And now he can do it all over again with a new super PAC.
Randi Rhodes. RandiRhodes.com.
911, what's your emergency?
America's healthcare system is broken, and people are dying.
Welcome to Code Whack, where we shine a light on America's callous healthcare system, how it hurts us, and what we can do about it. I'm your host, Brenda Gazar. This time on Code Whack. What are some of the possible dangers and pitfalls of Medicare Advantage plans? And how do they respond to patients' needs differently compared to traditional Medicare? To find out, we spoke to Dr. Ed Weisbart, a retired family physician and a national board member of Physicians for a National Health Program.
So when Medicare pays your claims, as it does in original or traditional Medicare, Parts A and B, that's their only job, is to pay your claims. They don't get in the way. They're not trying to make money off of you. You have Medicare as your health insurance. You go to the doctor or hospital that you want, and Medicare pays your claims. But if you have opted into Medicare Advantage, Medicare itself is no longer paying your claims at all. Instead, Medicare is paying an insurance company to pay your claims. And the insurance company, as we all learned from having employer-based insurance and other things, is really not out to just pay your claims. They're out to make money off of this. And so the more often they can avoid paying your claims or deny paying your claims or delay paying your claims or make it complicated for anybody to get a claim paid, the more they can do that, the more money they can make. So they're no longer really focused on you. They're now focused on their own profits. And that's completely different than having the government just pay your claims, than having Medicare pay your claims.
A full Code Whack story on ProgressiveVoices.com and on the PV app. Catch all our episodes by subscribing to Code Whack wherever you find your podcast. This podcast is powered by Heal California, a nonprofit that uplifts the voices of those fighting for healthcare reform around the country. Until next time, stay healthy.
Now, the top of the hour on the Progressive Voices channel on TuneIn presents the Green News Report.
Definitely not a Republican wave, that's for darn sure.
Missing red wave in 2022 midterms is good news for the climate. Skyrocketing levels of climate warming methane, plus...
Don't be fooled.
Prop 30 is being advertised as a climate initiative.
Mixed results for environmental ballot propositions.
All of those results and more straight ahead from BradBlog.com. I'm Brad Friedman.
And I'm Desi Doyen.
Stand by for 6 minutes of independent green news, politics, analysis, and snarky comment.
Newsom's ultimate victory is likely to be a landslide, which, since this is California, will be followed by an earthquake and a wildfire.
True story. This is your Green News Report. Okay, Desi Doyen, I'm happy to hear that the midterm elections were not a disaster for the climate.
Mm-hmm.
But speaking of disasters, Florida is once again in trouble.
Yes, a rare November hurricane, Hurricane Nicole, made landfall on Florida's east coast overnight Wednesday as a Category 1,